On today's Locked On Texans podcast, we are looking at who the Houston Texans should take with the number 42 overall pick. Should it be Xavier Worthy? And we're taking two segments to dive into the YouTube comments.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Locked On Texans fans and listeners, to this Friday episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your Texans football analyst, Johnson Sports Guy Hickman. On the other side of the screen, Texans credentialed media member, Sports Illustrated's own, Cody Davis. If this is your first time stopping by, watching and listening to the Locked On Texans podcast, thank you for locking in with us. Please subscribe, like, and comment to the podcast on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast, including following us on Twitter at Locked On Texans. We're diving into the YouTube comments today. We're going to spend an extra segment just looking at what's going on in the Locked On Texans world,
in general. Comments.
Got some good comments out there that we can't wait to dive into. And should the Houston Texans draft Xavier Worthy with the number 42 overall pick? I do want to let you guys know eagerly that this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Cody, the Houston Texans, as of right now, you look at them bringing back Noah Brown. Robert Woods is still on this roster. However, the wide receiver position and core is still, how can I put this with being nice? Just being very nice.
It's the same.
It's the same, right? No upgrades has been done to it. The only upgrade that we can see as of right now, I guess we can say would be an upgrade. It's just guys getting better than what they were last season. But in terms of additions and players added to the roster, that hasn't happened. So a lot of speculation right now for the Houston Texans is, what are they going to do with their first pick? The Locked On Network had a mock draft, and with the number 42 overall pick, Cody and I decided to go with Xavier Worthy, wide receiver out of UT. And for me, guys, it's really just all about one thing. There you go. It's all about, taking the words of general manager Nick Caserio and head coach D'Amico Ryans and putting that on paper and bringing it to life. And that is separators. Separate is what we need to do. But Xavier Worthy, blazing speed, right? Combine record. He's a guy that uses his speed to win on his routes one-on-one. You do maybe want to look at how he's going to fare against press coverage, and I understand that. But, playing with a quarterback like C.J. Stroud, your job as a receiver is going to get a lot better. So, Cody, my question to you is, and listeners and viewers as well, with the number 42 overall pick, is Xavier Worthy a player that you would like to see in a Texans jersey?
I would say yes. John, it's funny that you started talking about the words that Nick Caserio and D'Amico Ryans talked about a month ago at the NFL Combine, because, look, I still got the video right here in our feed.
Yeah, with the receiver position, we're looking for guys who are separators, right? Who can separate, who can find a way to get open, right? And if you have that one redeeming quality that you can separate, right, that's what we're looking for, especially that shows up on third down, right? How do you win third down? How do you stay on the field as an offense, right, and continue to produce and move the ball down the field? It's about third down, right, and being able to convert. And the way you convert is guys who are savvy enough to find a way to always get open.
When you look at Worthy, man, I do believe that he is the type of guy that can come in and actually be this team wide receiver 3. Depending on how you feel about your boy John Mechie, like me, could possibly either share that title of wide receiver 3 or take to him as wide receiver 4. Because John, on yesterday's show, we talked about Coach D'Amico Ryans' desire to improve the defensive line a lot. And, I make this joke here a lot on this show that the Houston Texans probably made about 15 to 16 roster changes. Out of the 15 to 16, at least 12 or 13 came on the defensive side of the ball, and about 9 of those came on the defensive line. And the only significant improvement, the only significant move that they made so far on the offensive side of the ball was to trade for Joe Mixon. But it goes back to something that you said at the start of this offseason. What the Houston Texans have with the wide receiving core with those two guys, it's not enough, especially considering that if we are expecting this team to take this leap into playoff and hopefully championship contention, giving them a championship window, especially with majority of your core young guys still on their rookie roster, they're going to have to go all out and try to improve this roster and give CJ Stroud as many weapons as possible. And John, my biggest fear is if the Texans get too complacent with CJ's talent and they think to themselves, well, maybe we don't have to put too much stock into the wide receiving core because we know
we talked about that recently.
Exactly, because we know CJ probably made me look like an NFL receiver at this point. That's how good his very first season was. But I just don't want the Texans to just get complacent knowing that as long as they have a potential top 5 without a shadow of a doubt, a top 10 quarterback, that they feel like they don't have to put too much stock at that position. No, the Houston Texans are probably entering a phase in their franchise that they have never had before, where you have the head coach, the talent, the play calling, the ownership, everybody is on one accord for them to try to win their first Super Bowl title within these next couple of years. And in order to do that, they gotta continue building and adding talent and depth, because there's one thing another thing that Coach DeMeco Ryans and Nick Caserio said at the NFL Combine is that they are looking to add depth at every single position. And when we take a look at that wide receiving core, outside of Tank and Nico, there's not that much depth, especially knowing that you cannot trust Noah Brown or Robert Woods.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Xavier Worthy is a player that, at 42 and how this team is set up right now and put together, I don't need for you to come in and be my number one or my number two.
Like I said, depending on John, maybe not even 3.
And again, to your point, maybe you guys can share that, but I think 42 may be maybe too high for Worthy. Really? I'm a Worthy fan, and let me say this: Mo City Mitch and Worthy would have been, I think, respected more if the only thing that mattered was tape and not stats to go behind it, which is why I think Mo City Mitch is getting bumped up as a first rounder before the combine and before all of the the offseason workouts and everything. I don't think he was a first rounder, but I do think after the combine, a lot of people had an opportunity to just see his raw skills, and his 40 time really did help him. All right, he's a guy that I think really did suffer from quarterback play last year. And with me saying that about Mitch, I got to say the same thing about Worthy. He's a guy that really did suffer from quarterback play last year. Worthy is your guy that can just take a top off of defense. Think Deshaun Jackson. I was reading a report, and it's funny because when I say this, I'm not saying this is what he'll turn out to be, but the comparison for Worthy was Tyreek Hill. He could just blow right past defenders, or he can just outright take a top off of defense. And again, 42 may be considered a little high, but it's not high for a team that has yet to address that need. That makes sense. We got the YouTube comments coming up on the other side of the show. Don't go nowhere. It's Friday, a fun day here on the Locked On Texans podcast. Hey, guys, go ahead and say goodbye to Busted Brackets, because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tournament. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 wins. That's right, $200 in your pocket to use on point spreads, money lines. You pick. You can even pick who's going to win it all. So just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers, to the Friday episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. We are doing 2 segments of the YouTube comments.
Y'all
And
been in the comments.
I got
Fire.
I gotta open up with, though, Cody, you may find this funny. My man at LuG.9110.
Mm-hmm.
And he said Corey, maybe that was just a typo, but I'm sure he meant Cody. He said, Cody, I understand Davis. You know what? Cody is very understanding, guys. It's like, well, I understand it. I get it. And then he'll go into his point. But I thought that was funny. We got an interesting comment. I think it's pretty fire. 2018, 2019, 2017, between 17, 18, and 19. Those were some pretty good years for both the Rockets and the Texans. And the comment that I'm seeing now is, can Jalen Green, who has been on fire? If y'all are watching the show right now on YouTube, there's a jersey behind me. The Bryant jersey, the 33 Lower Marion jersey.
Stop
Jalen
it.
Green has looked just like Kobe Bryant. But can Jalen Green and CJ Stroud be the next Deshaun and James Hart and how they turned the city up in terms of sports? I'm going to say this. With a competent front office, because I do believe that both DeMeco Ryans is a better coach than O'Brien and has a better coaching staff and plan than O'Brien. And I wish I could tell you guys how much more better of a coach I think Ime Udoka is over Mike D'Antoni. I've never liked him. Cody knows how much I've never liked him as a coach.
We never liked him.
We've never liked him, but there's a hard and big disdain for Mike D'Antoni. I don't want them to be Harden and Deshaun because neither one of those guys did what?
Brought a championship.
Neither one of them did it. And it was heartbreak after heartbreak. But I do think with CJ Stroud, I do think this is a team that has a real shot because he's so good of a quarterback. Right. I do think he has a shot to take this team to the promised land.
Man, look, first of all, let me just say this. As someone who covered, as you guys know, both the Rockets and the Texans, let me just say that this past season with the Texans, and of course, the second half of the NBA season with the Houston Rockets, man, let me just say, man, it has been a joy and it has been fun covering both of these teams, but more so Jalen Green and CJ Stroud, because, guys, I don't think you understand that we are literally watching the beginning of something special in both of these guys' careers. And it's not just Jalen and CJ. I know that's what the comments say, but to me, it's a little bit deeper. LP, Will Anderson Jr., Jabari Smith, Tank Dell. It's just like, both teams have so many young players to the point it's like, wow, if they can really get everything together, both of these teams can definitely do something special. But let me just say this about CJ, John. And this popped in my mind when you was talking about, how great CJ is. This is the first year since you and I have been covering this team that we did not have an opportunity, nor do we need to study the quarterbacks coming out in this year's draft. But I'm still reading and I'm still listening to what they have to say about Jaden Daniels and all the rest of these guys. By the way, in my opinion, I think Jaden Daniels is going to be the best quarterback coming out in this year's draft. But John, to me, I'm sitting there and I just can't help but think that the Houston Texans and Texans fans, you should love this, that you guys not only have a franchise quarterback, but your franchise quarterback is so damn good to the point that he is being viewed as the pinnacle. Every single rookie quarterback coming out in this year's draft, everybody from ESPN, Fox Sports, the Daily Beat reporters, wherever, they all are asking the same question. Can they come close to replicating the success as CJ Stroud in his first season, especially the young man that's about to go to Chicago with their first overall pick? And John, it's just one of those moments where it's like, wow, the Texans, they got it right. And not only do they got it right, they are on the verge of something special. And I think this could be the first time in this franchise history where somebody and people are looking at the Houston Texans and saying, you know what? They got that guy. I understand you had Deshaun, but even Deshaun wasn't the pinnacle of where you are rating other quarterbacks. You know, he was always maybe a one step. In my mind, I thought at one time they was on the same level. But even Deshaun maybe was a step behind Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. And the next 5 years, probably even shorter than that, CJ is going to be at the top of this quarterback list. And like I say, man, it's just mind-blowing knowing that we as reporters are covering a quarterback that's the pinnacle of where a lot of these rookies are going to be judged off of for the next year. And you know, I know you mentioned Jalen Green, and I know I started talking about CJ a lot here, but Jalen Green, man, just like I said on yesterday's show, and I'm gonna repeat it again. Jalen Green is the definition of why you need to give all players, regardless of the sport, regardless of the stadium or anything like that, you need to give these young men 3 to 4 years to get it together. And that's part of the reason why I still believe that Jalen Petrie, understand it, and I get it.
Let's throw Damian Pierce in there just a little.
Damian Pierce, you know, and John Mechie. Jalen Green is the definition as to why you need to make sure you give these young players a fair opportunity in their first couple of years when they enter the league. Because look, early on in the season,
I understand it. I get it.
Early on in the season, Jalen Green did not look good. But look, the Houston Rockets have a chance to basically replicate the same success that we saw at the Houston Texans, shock everybody and make the playoffs. And it all goes down to him just having that time to lock in, focus, and develop. And now, look, correct me if I'm wrong, John, but I don't think there's nobody in the NBA as of right now that's playing better football than Jalen Green. But basketball, then Jalen Green, just like midway through the season, when MVP conversation started taking off with CJ, there was a moment where no quarterback was playing better football than CJ Stroud. They're the next two in the city of Houston, baby. It's about to be fun.
And don't forget, the Astros are popping too. Welcome back, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. More YouTube comments. Listen. We talked about whether or not the AFC South will be the most competitive division. We got a lot of comments. So I want to, kind of bring it back a little bit. At Jack Ripper, 5270. The AFC South is definitely competitive and it's on the rise with 4 quarterbacks. And got a response to that. Let It Rain 24 said 4 with the side eyes. And then he said, then that person said, 2 haven't proven anything at all. Guys, I'm excited to see what Will Levis can do this year. Burks, Hopkins, Ridley, a change in running back scenery, but they're going to improve that offensive line. Still got Jeffrey Simmons over there, got Snead. I think they're going to do a very good job of building up their defense. I think that's going to be because, last year, injuries, quarterback ups and downs, they had a lot going on. I do think that the Titans will be tough competition for every team in this division. Honestly, I really do. And I could be putting my foot in my mouth, but with time missed and every other quarterback in this division having a full season, and getting an opportunity to go through ups and downs of the season and finish the season, I think the Colts and Anthony Richardson, who I can't wait to see him blossom, but I think they're going to be a little disappointing because of what fans may have, what people may have of their expectations of them. Anthony Richardson only played 2 games last year, guys. And outside of those 2 games where against the Texans, he did look very good in that first quarter, no doubt about it. Outside of those 2 games, CJ Stroud had an opportunity to really go through a season and get better during the season. Levis had his moments. I'm still not ready to count out Trevor Lawrence. So I think the Colts are going to be a little disappointing this upcoming season. I could be wrong, and if so, then that's great for the Colts. But I don't know, Cody. What are your thoughts about the AFC South and the quarterbacks in the division?
I'm excited about all of them, but I would say I would agree with that one viewer that two of the quarterbacks in the division, they haven't really proved much. I mean, Will Levis, he did have, let's say a decent rookie season once he took the helm as the starting quarterback. And I understand he was not in the most favorable situation. I also understand that the Tennessee Titans did a pretty good job, retooling. Talking about a team that added weapons. They have done a really good job in, adding weapons around him. And I think it's going to be one of them situations if everything work out in the Titans' favor. Maybe they could try to make a run at the division title. But as of right now, I got to see more from Will Levis. As for the Indianapolis Colts, look, Anthony Richardson in those 2 games looked damn good. He looked scary good. And the one thing I keep going back to, he played and looked that good without Jonathan Taylor. And you telling me that the Indianapolis Colts are going to have an offensive backfield that will feature Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor. I think when you add Taylor back into the mix of things alongside Anthony Richardson, I'm pretty sure that the Colts will try to tell Anthony Richardson, hey, we got one of the best running backs in the game today. You don't have to use your legs as much as you did in those first 2-3 games that we saw you. Because look, every time Anthony Richardson got hurt in his rookie season, and even back in college, it came during a play where he was using his legs, running and scrambling. So you pair that with one of the top 3, 4, 5 best running backs in the game today. And not only that, you also got to consider how close they came. I understand that the Texans went to the divisional round and host the playoffs and all that. But had a couple plays worked out in the Colts' favor, we'd be sitting here talking about how can the Houston Texans make it to the playoffs. That's how close that game was in the season finale. And it's one of them situations where I look, Gardner Minshew had a hell of a season. But as of right now, he ain't Anthony Richardson, man. And the potential of Richardson, knowing what we got here in Houston with CJ. And like you, John, I'm not about to count off the Jacksonville Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence, man. That's why I say this division could definitely be one, if not the best division in football, not just in 2024, but for the next couple of seasons, because neither one of these quarterbacks are going anywhere anytime soon.
I got a question, and it doesn't have to do with the YouTube comments, but how much pressure is currently on Nick Caserio to build off last year?
A lot. A lot. Because,
how much pressure is on D'Amico?
A lot.
Do they share that same amount of pressure?
No, because I'm trying. How can I put this? I wouldn't necessarily say they share it, only because, like, when I look at Nick, even though this is year 3 for him, year 4, I'm starting to lose count. I know some people
think of it like this: Cully, Lovey,
D'Amico. Okay. So we're going into year 4. Golly, the first 2 years, it was really just Nick Caserio cleaning up the mess of what took place before he got here and trying to find a foundation. And this also goes back to why I believe the rapid success the Houston Texans had last year could be a detriment in 2024, because you're going to have so many people saying, look, if you don't make it at least to the divisional round, it's going to be a failure. And CJ, you could kind of hold him to the same standard as well, because it's like, we saw what you was able to do in your first season as the head coach, Bobby Sloyd as the offensive coordinator, CJ Stroud as a rookie quarterback. Remember, John, for the longest, we thought half the season was just going to be a learning curve. And about after the week 3, when they beat the Jacksonville Jaguars in Jacksonville, that's when we was like, okay, we could be in for something special.
I would say the Steelers game is where I think everybody looked at that team a little differently.
So Steelers was that week 4? I want to say week 4 or 5. That's still pretty early in the season. I didn't think we was going to get there until week 11, week 12 coming into the season. But I say all that just to say that the Texans need to make sure that they find a way either to sustain that level of success or at least try to surpass it. And it's going to be hard. Just take a look at their schedule alone. They have a first place schedule. Yeah. And And you know, in terms of Nick Caserio, it's like, okay, how can you continue to build off of the success with your roster construction and stuff? And a lot of people already have questions about, you know, whether or not how he, you know, gave the lack of weapons on the offensive side of the ball. You know, then there's going to be the other side where D'Amico, because you're a defensive-minded coach, did you focus too much on defense to the point you allow this wide receiver to walk, to the point you allow, you know, you had Saquon Barkley in your palm of your hands, but you allow him to go to
just
Philly?
came out and said, I really wanted to be in Houston.
My point exactly.
But you know what? But what let's be fair though. What we found out was Philly just gave him too much money.
Was it too much money, or
was it 14.5 he got?
Yeah, but how much money? What was the difference between what the Texans gave? For, you know, that sound like?
Thinking about 4
to 5. You know what 4 to 5 million sound like? Since we were talking basketball earlier, the OKC when they let James Harden walk for 4 to 5 million, and look how that turned out. So it's just one of them situations, man. Well, look, the season and stuff is going to have to play out, but it's just one of them situations where if they don't make it to the playoffs or come close or whatever, man, this second season might be disappointing for a lot of people.
Thank y'all for listening and watching the Locked On Texans podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, that's Cody, COTYDAVIS_24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.
Peace. I understand it. I get it.